Yo, get this. My sister wants me to babysit her son until he turns 18, so she can go and frolic around partying. My sister, who's 39 and I 30, lived alone after our parents died in a horrible car accident. My sister was about 15 years of age when our parents died and I was 9 years younger. She was my mom and dad because we lived together in our parents' house, just the two of us. We're no longer each other's universe because she wanted me to keep babysitting her son until he was 18, but I refused as he was a big boy who could do anything on his own. Well, it all began 3 years after our parents died. The year our parents passed, Emma was so afraid that we would get separated if we were to go to an orphanage, because families only love adopting the younger kids and leave the older ones behind always. So Emma tried by all means to hide us from the child services to avoid being taken to an orphanage. We lived in our parents' house. She cared for me and loved me so much. Sometimes I would miss mom and dad, then I would look at Emma's eyes and automatically feel safe. We were doing okay for 3 years, then on Emma's 18th birthday, she went to a party where she made some new friends and she started going out with some popular guy from their school. As young as I was, I knew from the moment I met them, they were toxic. Emma started missing classes to hang out with her friends. A few months later, I went home from school and I found her crying. I sat beside her and comforted her. I asked her what was the problem, and she hesitated for some minutes before she told me that she was pregnant. I was so heartbroken that someone was coming into the world to replace me, to take my old sister away. Emma had just broken up with her boyfriend because of the pregnancy, and her friends abandoned her because they're apparently just not party with mothers. I felt bad for Emma, even though I warned her earlier, but she refused to listen to me because I'm younger than her. The baby finally arrived, and instead of him taking my place, he was my best friend. My sister started leaving us in the house alone late at night with no excuse that she was going to study with a friend, when she was really going out to party with some others. Sometimes I was forced to miss school because I had to babysit Lucas, while Emma went shopping with her friends. A few years passed and I turned 18. I was fed up with Emma's behavior. I had to babysit my nephew for years just because my careless sister was busy having a time of her life. Emma even started missing my birthdays because all she was worried about was where she would go for the next party. I decided to ask my sister for my share of the inheritance because I wanted to do something with my life. Well, she refused because she wanted me to always stay at home, babysitting Lucas and do nothing else. I could not believe my sister was being selfish. All she told me was that she would only give me my share when I turned 21. I had no idea that that money that she used to go out with her friends was the money from the inheritance. I graduated high school and looked for a job to help me further my studies. I was also passionate about computer science, so I asked my sister to get me a laptop to make my studies easier, but she refused as always. I was so angry I could throw a whole couch at her. As bad and selfish as she's become, she was still my older sister, who helped me move on after mom and dad died. So somehow, I felt that I owed her a lot. I finally turned 21 and was so excited that I could finally get my inheritance money to help me finish college and start a business of my own. We had the talk with my sister, and she got annoyed by me apparently always asking for money. I had no clue that she was annoyed because she knew that she had almost finished her share of the money, and she was still in the same position. So we started arguing about it. She got mad and threw a check in my face. It was only half of the money that I was supposed to get. I immediately decided that I was moving out of the house, and I started renting a small apartment. Emma was not happy at all because she knew that it was going to be hard for her to go out as she had nowhere to leave Lucas. I was somehow relieved because I could fully focus on my work and academics. A few days later, Emma called me. She wanted me to help her out to babysit Lucas for just one evening because she had a date with some guy that she thought was going to propose to her. Well, I did not mind it because it sounded like my sister was getting her life together. Little did I know, she was just using me as she always did. She came home late that night. She was wasted. She had no idea where she was. I put her to bed and left, and on my way out, I noticed that the car that dropped her off was full of other ladies. She lied to me again. I had never felt so disrespected by my own sister. She called me just so I could watch her son while she continued to party. That was really selfish of her to do, might I add. Well, a few months later, she called to ask me if Lucas could come and stay with me just for a day. I could not refuse my nephew from coming over to stay for a Saturday. Lucas came over. He did not look happy at all. I wondered what was wrong with him, and when I remembered that it was his birthday, I took him shopping and we celebrated his birthday with games and fun. After the day ended, I noticed his smile fading. I asked him what's wrong, and he answered, "My mother doesn't love me at all. She didn't even remember it's my birthday today. She leaves me alone in the house the whole day and night, and she does not even cook for me." I could not believe that my sister had completely neglected Lucas. I tried to call her to talk about it, but she was not answering, so I decided to drive Lucas back home. But Lucas did not want to go back home there. Upon arriving at Emma's place, I noticed her door was open. I just thought for a second that she was robbed or even kidnapped. I slowly entered her house and started calling her in a soft voice, just in case the robber was still there. Well, I looked around the whole house, but I could not find her. I was ready to call the police, and that's when I spotted her through the window, lying on the ground in the backyard. I thought something bad and terrible had happened to her, so I ran out to see if she was okay. I found a bottle of vodka next to her, and that's when I realized that my sister was addicted to alcohol. I was so mad at her that she had neglected Lucas, but then I realized she was not being herself, and I had to do something about it. I looked up a very affordable rehabilitation center to register her effectively if I want Lucas to have a good future. I told Lucas his mother was doing okay, but she needed to do a doctor's checkup for some days to make sure she was really okay. I could see Lucas was excited to be staying with me, but it was the exact opposite of his mother. She was so angry that I've put her in a rehab center. She wanted to be partying all day and night, but I cared for my nephew so much. Emma started emotionally blackmailing me so that I could fall for letting her go back home. She told me she was just missing mom and dad, and that she just missed me so much after I moved out. She wanted me to take her home so we could go back to the way we were. But I just could not live around her. She's a pain in the gut. Well, fast forward 30 days. She was discharged and ready to go home. We went to pick her up and took her home with Lucas. I promised him that his mother would never leave him again. I was so glad that Emma was clean and she was taking good care of her son. It was almost 6 months of her not calling me to ask if I could babysit. Then one day, out of the blue, she called me to tell me that Lucas said he wanted to come here for the weekend. I didn't refuse because I've been convinced that my sister was clean. So Lucas came over, we had fun like always, he stayed for the weekend. On Sunday evening, though, I tried asking Emma if she was home so I could drop little Lucas off since he had school the next morning. Since she wasn't answering the phone, I decided just to take Lucas and go check up on her, make sure she was all right. As we reached the house, I could see party lights from a distance inside the house. Strobe lights, disco balls. We parked at the car and got out. As we approached the house, we could hear music. It kept getting louder and louder as we moved closer to the door. Well, I opened the door, and that's when I saw Emma and a bunch of people who looked like zombies dancing and drinking the night away. I'd never been so disappointed. My sister had picked up the bottle again. I decided that it was best to get Lucas custody so he could start living with me, rather than getting him into such a stress with his mom as it could have affected his school performance. A month later, I presented my case in court, stating the faults of Lucas living with his mother. Emma was so angry that I was taking her son away from her. She presented her case and, well, she lied about me being her sister. She told the judge that I was adopted, that I threatened her and Lucas some time back when he was still a baby. Unfortunately, after everything, I lost the case against her. I decided that the best thing for me was to stay away from her for good. It was working the first 3 months. She then came to apologize to me and she begged me for days to forgive her. She said she was just a mother protecting her son. She sounded like a kindergarten child who did not want to know what they were saying. I was so furious that she could deny her child a good future out of selfishness. I finally came to forgive her, although I regretted it a few months later as she started calling me again for me to come babysit her now 15-year-old son Lucas. Lucas was growing and he could now take care of himself. But my sister wanted me to babysit him anyways. She kept saying that her baby would starve or that her baby would fall ill. She now started calling him her baby after the court case because she knew she could lose him if she did not behave like a mother. Well guys, let's fast forward now. A year's passed, with Emma drinking less but still partying like she was a growing younger. And it was the age of 37 when she discovered that she was passionate about music. So, what did she do next? She started renting a small studio with the little money left from the money she borrowed from me a few months back. Started going to even more parties. She became friends with some DJs and started going around from party to party. And all that time, she wanted me to babysit Lucas. He was 16 years old, for heaven's sakes. What could he possibly not do for himself? I had a full-time job to deal with and worry about a 16-year-old? It was just too much. I called Emma so we could talk about the whole situation. I could no longer be babysitting someone who was able to babysit 3 kids at once. But Emma, being herself, decided to remind me of how miserable I looked after our parents died, and how she stood by me and took care of me. I was hurt to hear my sister rub it in my face. If all she wanted was to make me feel bad about myself, then she did quite a fantastic job. I felt like I owed her my life, that I did not even think about how much I've helped her, even since Lucas's birth. She was never available. I had to be a mother for him for so many years. I had to skip school sometimes just so I could be with him. Lucas turned 17 years and Emma was still partying her life away. And even though she was getting pretty old now, my sister never knew when to stop. Lucas started answering to me the way he wanted because he felt like I was not the boss of him. I had no idea that it was Emma's phrase that she told Lucas to tell me if I ever told him to do this homework or anything bossy. My sister somehow wanted me to always be the sad way she found me, which was to tell Lucas to always tell me that I'm not his mother and that I have no control over his life. I hated babysitting them more than ever. I wanted to leave him alone in the house. I did it for a few months, and I told Emma that I was done babysitting her ill-mannered child, Lucas. Lucas was the sweetest boy, but because of his mother who poisoned his mind against me, he became the most annoying, disrespectful child I've ever came across. Emma tried to blackmail me as usual, but I was so angry that not even her reminding me about Mom and Dad's death, well, was going to stop me from walking out of Lucas and Emma's life. Emma was so angry at me that I refused to babysit her 17-year-old son. She knew she could not afford a babysitter, as I was babysitting Lucas for free, and I asked for nothing in return. But she played with the wrong chick. She tried calling me several times, and I just kept ignoring her calls. Later on, I started cutting her calls, but she would not give up. She just kept ringing and ringing. I decided to block her on every social media and phone number. Also email. I was angry at her for taking advantage of my kindness, making me look like a fool. She decided to come to my apartment unannounced, just so she could persuade me into babysitting her soon-to-be 18-year-old son. But I refused and I chased her away. I knew that she would not give up that easily, so I moved out of my apartment. I wanted to forget this has ever existed, because I knew that at the time that she'll have never be the same again. She would always be poison to my system. Even though I loved her, I needed to free myself from her. And even if I loved Lucas so much and basically raised him, it hurt so much when I left. But it was, in fact, the wisest decision I've ever made in my life. Mom and Dad would have never wanted us to be separate. They would have wanted us to be their little girls who take care of each other, back for back, skin for skin. But I needed my mental health if I ever wanted someone in my life. My sister was simply too toxic. It was overflowing into her son. No one could bear to live with them because they would break someone apart without even trying. That is how much I love myself. So I had to leave everything behind and live a life I would remember. A life full of laughter, love, and definitely not the opposite. Okay, so here's one of the top comments that got a lot of replies. It says this: "Hey OP, I'm sorry you had to go through this. I was hoping the entire time you were going to get custody of Lucas. But when he started to act negative towards you, I knew it's too late. He's been corrupted by your sister. I think going no contact was the best option, and I wish you good luck. Thanks for showing this story to me, and I hope you the best in the future." So guys, let me know exactly what you thought of that comment. Was that good advice? And tell me what you would tell OP if you were in her unique position. And poor Lucas, the kid turned out to be a jerk, all because his mom just didn't give him any attention. Well, that's all the stories for today, guys. Consider subscribing, and like always, have a wonderful day, and remember, it's cool to be kind.